what arguments do Muslims have for Islam?
You could distinguish them. You could say you got the Quranic arguments, the arguments that the Quran gives, and then you've got arguments that other Muslims give. But most of these arguments, if you actually look into them, it takes you like 5 or 10 minutes of research to find out how bogus they are. So again, the Quran's main argument for itself is this literary argument. It's just so wonderfully written, it can only be from God. Now, the reason that's silly is you can point out, well, was Mozart's music the inspired music of God because it's so wonderful? Who in the world is the judge here? Muslims are the judge. They set themselves up as the judge of this contest. And of course they're going to say that no one can surpass it. But if you look at actual, you can find literary experts like Ali Dashti and so on, who's just talked about he was an Iranian, and he just talked about how the Quran has all these problems. It has grammatical errors. It has you can't tell what certain verses are even talking about. 𝗥𝗘𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗠𝗘𝗡 said that on average, he said that there are massive sections of the Quran that can't even be understood. You can't understand what they're saying. So you have problems like that. So there's that argument. There's the argument from biblical prophecy, where supposedly the Bible, the Torah, and the Gospel refer to Muhammad. So you just have to learn which passages Muslims are going to use. They argue that science confirms Islam because the Quran contains all these miraculous scientific statements that couldn't be verified until modern time. When if you actually read the Quran says that the sun sets in a muddy pool way out west. You can actually go there and find the place where the sun sets. The Quran says that stars are missiles that Allah uses to shoot demons who try to sneak into heaven. When you see a shooting star, it's because Allah caught a demon trying to sneak into heaven, and he shot him with a star. So the Quran says that semen is formed between the backbone and the ribs. It's just not true.
Right.
So I mean, the Quran makes these massive scientific blunders, and then Muslims claim science as their ally. And one of the most common arguments you'll get is that the Quran's been perfectly preserved. That's very easy to respond to. You go through the Muslim sources, they talk about entire chapters being lost, large sections being lost, verses being eaten by a sheep, and that was the only copy, so they're not in the Quran anymore. You find those kinds of things, so that one's easy to respond to. And then once you gone through all the arguments, Muslims will just end with, but Islam's the fastest growing religion, so it must be true. So you can point out that something growing rapidly does not mean that it's true. I mean, coronavirus is spreading rapidly. It doesn't mean it's, it doesn't mean it's the true religion or something like that. Communism spread extremely rapidly in the 20th century. That doesn't mean that it's the true political system. But apart from that, if you look at why Islam is growing rapidly, which they think Muslims think that it's from conversions or something like that. The same Pew Research study that said that Islam's the fastest growing religion that they point to, and they just look at the title, they don't actually read it. The same Pew Research study that they point to says why Islam is the fastest growing religion, and it's because Muslims have the highest birth rates. And if you start looking into why Muslims have the highest birth rates, it's just because in so many Muslim areas of the world, there are far fewer opportunities for women to do anything beyond, being married off and starting to bear children. So in many areas they don't go to school at all, but in areas where they go to school, it's not like they go through all of grade school and then go on to college and then get their career and then start having children. Whereas a woman in the West might have her first child at 25, 26, 27, 28 years old. By that time, a Muslim wife in a Muslim country is on, baby number 6 or 7 or 8. And so that's why Islam is growing rapidly. So if they really wanted to give the argument in all its glory, it would be Islam treats women as baby making machines, and therefore it must be the true religion. That's a very strange argument.